My goal is to make the world a better place while I'm here, and The Exorcist gives me that tool to speak to people, whereas maybe they mightn't be as interested in what I'm doing.
Before becoming the girl who terrified the world in The Exorcist, Linda Blair was just an ordinary child. Born in 1959 in Missouri, she grew up in a peaceful, middle-class family in Connecticut. No one could have imagined that the girl who preferred horseback riding to acting would become the center of one of the biggest cinematic phenomena of the 20th century. From the age of 5, Linda appeared in Sears and Macy's catalogs and numerous television commercials. Her innocent face, charming smile, and perfect appearance made her the ideal American child. But Linda herself never saw Hollywood as her dream. While adults saw a future star, she spent most of her time practicing horseback riding and hoping to one day become a veterinarian. Everything changed in 1972 when Warner Brothers held nationwide auditions for the role of Reagan MacNeil in The Exorcist. This wasn't an ordinary child role. They needed a girl innocent enough for the audience to love, but also strong enough to perform scenes that no child in Hollywood history had ever been asked to do. Hundreds of applicants failed, one after another. Some were too naive, some were terrified by the script itself. Then Linda walked into the audition room. She didn't try to impress, she didn't overact, but her strange calmness immediately caught the attention of director William Friedkin. On the outside, she was the image of a well-behaved girl from a promotional catalog, but inside, she possessed a maturity and composure rarely seen in a 13-year-old. That's exactly what the film needed. But what awaited Linda behind that door wasn't fame, but an experience that would stay with her for the rest of her life. During filming, the director pursued authenticity to an extreme degree. The exorcism scenes were filmed in a room as cold as a freezer. Linda had to lie for hours in flimsy clothing in sub-freezing temperatures. Then came the fateful day when the mechanical harness system used for the demonic possession scene suddenly malfunctioned. The violent jolt severely injured her spine. Linda screamed in pain, but the film crew continued filming, thinking it was just acting. No one knew that the screams audiences would hear on screen later were actually the agonizing cries of a wounded girl. When the film ended, Linda believed the hardest part was over. Little did she know that the real nightmare had only just begun. When The Exorcist was released in late 1973, America went almost insane. It was no longer just a film, but an unprecedented cultural phenomenon. Long lines of people stretched outside theaters in the winter cold. Inside, many viewers fainted, burst into tears, or fled midway through the screening. Newspapers constantly reported on the panicked viewers after leaving the theater. In the midst of this frenzy, Linda Blair was only 14 years old. In just a few weeks, she went from an unknown girl to the most famous face in America. Praise poured in from everywhere. She received an Oscar nomination for Best Supporting Actress, becoming one of the youngest people ever to achieve this. But with fame came a price no child should have to pay. During the film's promotional tour throughout 1974, Linda was constantly asked strange and frightening questions. They weren't about her acting or filmmaking techniques. Instead, they wanted to know if she believed in the devil, if the film was truly cursed, or if she had been affected by some supernatural force after filming. These questions were repeated so often that Linda was almost no longer seen as a young actress. She became a symbol of the fear the film created. Worse still, many religious extremist groups began to see her as the embodiment of evil. Threatening letters appeared more and more frequently. Some threats were so specific that Warner Brothers was forced to hire armed bodyguards to protect her. For months, men with guns lived in the Blair family's home. They took her to school, picked her up, and followed her everywhere she went. Imagine a teenage girl trying to live a normal student life, but every day they were bodyguards standing outside her classroom door. Linda understood that if she wanted to survive in Hollywood, she had to prove she was more than just Reagan MacNeil. Therefore, she landed the lead role in the television series Born Innocent. The show was a resounding success and became the most watched television program that year. But instead of opening up new opportunities, that success inadvertently created another trap. Film studios realized that audiences liked to see Linda in roles of suffering, trauma, or tragedy. She gradually became typecast as a perpetual victim on screen. Then, in 1977, Hollywood made an offer that an 18-year-old girl could hardly refuse: return to Exorcist II. Linda hoped this would be a chance to restore her former glory. But she had no idea that this decision was about to plunge her career into a crisis even greater than anything she had experienced before. If the success of The Exorcist propelled Linda Blair to the height of fame at the age of 14, the years that followed proved that Hollywood often doesn't know what to do with young stars who have become too famous. The film, released in 1977, quickly became a disaster. Audiences were disappointed, critics scoffed, and it was considered one of the worst sequels in film history. In just a few years, Linda experienced both extremes of Hollywood, from a celebrated icon to a face associated with a major failure. Big scripts disappeared, and opportunities in A-list films were no longer as readily available. But the worst was yet to come. At the end of 1977, Linda Blair's name appeared on the front pages of newspapers across America after her arrest in a drug-related investigation. Within hours, the image of the Oscar-nominated girl became the subject of sensationalist television programs and tabloids. The public immediately connected that story to her role as the possessed woman. Many people no longer saw Linda Blair. They only saw Reagan MacNeil in real life. The case dragged on for years, causing studios to lose faith in her, insurance companies to refuse contracts, and directors who had once wanted to work with her to turn their backs. When the case closed, Linda avoided prison, but her career was almost completely frozen. Entering the 1980s, Hollywood closed its doors to her. To survive, Linda had to turn to low-budget films, violent horror movies, and projects released directly on VHS tape. These weren't the kinds of works that would win her awards or restore her former status. They were simply jobs to keep living and moving forward. While audiences thought Linda Blair was gradually disappearing from Hollywood, she was actually fighting silently to avoid being completely consumed by it. By the early 1990s, as the VHS market began to decline, the roles that had sustained Linda Blair's career gradually disappeared. Hollywood had changed. A new generation of actors emerged, while the public still remembered her as the possessed girl from years past. In 1990, Linda starred in Repossessed, a comedy parody of The Exorcist. The film achieved some commercial success, but it also confirmed what she had been trying to escape for nearly 2 decades. No matter what she did, the world still saw Reagan MacNeil. Meanwhile, the consequences of the 1973 on-set accident worsened. The spinal injury she suffered as a teenager never truly disappeared. For years, Linda silently endured chronic pain, continuing to work without complaint. But by the late 1990s, her body could no longer tolerate it. Film offers dwindled, and health issues forced her to step back from the spotlight. To the public, this seemed like the end of a once world-famous star. But in reality, this was when Linda Blair began the life she had always dreamed of since childhood. Before Hollywood, Linda dreamed of becoming a veterinarian. Her love for animals never faded. As her acting career faded, she dedicated her time to rescuing abandoned and abused animals. In 2004, she founded the Linda Blair WorldHeart Foundation. It wasn't a glamorous charity with red carpets and cameras. Linda personally cleaned kennels, cared for injured dogs, took animals to safe shelters, and funded its operations herself. For over 2 decades, she did this almost without any media attention. Then, in 2023, when Hollywood returned with The Exorcist Believer, the producers wanted Linda Blair to appear to connect with the original film. But this time, she was no longer the 13-year-old girl caught up in the film industry. Linda only agreed to participate after being given the authority to protect child actors on set. A woman once harmed by the system now uses that experience to protect the next generation from what she once endured. That is also the true ending of Linda Blair's story. Not a star ruined by Hollywood, not a tragedy of the entertainment industry, but the story of a woman who experienced fame, pain, humiliation, and years of oblivion, and ultimately found what mattered most. Hollywood once made her the world's most famous horror icon. But Linda Blair's most memorable legacy perhaps doesn't lie on the screen. It lies in the lives she has saved after stepping away from the spotlight.